Hola a todos, bienvenidos a Bendito Fantasy. Esta ocasión tenemos un podcast ligeramente diferente porque esta vez no va a ser en español, desgraciadamente, pero es por una buena razón. Hoy tenemos como invitado especial a un miembro de la comunidad, vamos a decir internacional, aunque realmente pues inglesa. Se trata de Phillips, que accedió a platicar con nosotros y pues será en inglés. Pero, pues es una buena charla, los invito a quedarse porque platicamos de bastantes cosas, platicamos de sus orígenes, platicamos de fantasy, platicamos de la euro, de Inglaterra, de precios de jugadores, qué opina de los jugadores que están empezando ya a moverse. Hoy se vio unos pequeños cambios en el horizonte y entonces pues platicamos de todo eso. Bastante amena la charla, muy felices de que haya accedido y pues ahí estamos. Solo quiero mencionar que el video empieza un poco tarde de cuando empezó la entrevista, por alguna razón no se capturó completa, pero si quieren oír ese primer pedacito, que no es mucho realmente, pueden ir al podcast. La versión de audio sí se capturó completa. Entonces, bueno, si no quieren perderse ni un segundo, ahí está. De lo contrario, pues les dejo el video. Antes de irme, quiero invitarlos a que vayan a redes sociales, @Bendito Fantasy. Y pues si no nos siguen, ya vayan y lo hagan. Ya sea Instagram, Twitter, etcétera. Pero en Twitter pueden ir a encontrar, por ejemplo, el código de la mini liga para la euro, que ya se viene, empieza esta semana que viene. Y vamos a tener la mini liga. Ya está bastante gente suscrita, pero si todavía no saben si quieren o no, pues de una vez vayan haciendo un equipo, métanse a la liga y ya luego vemos. Por lo pronto, eso es todo. Los dejo con la entrevista. Hasta la próxima.
Getting really into football. I just went full Brighton, really. So I think that's what happens to a lot of people, right? They start when they're young, they don't really know. They just support a team just because their friends do or whatever. And then when you actually start learning a bit more about it, you kind of switch away. So
And did you go to the stadium, to the ground, or you prefer to watch them at home or at the pub?
I love going. It's just it's almost impossible to get a ticket now. Because they just sell out. I mean, it's impossible to get a ticket now because of COVID anyway. But before COVID, even then, it was kind of a year or two after they got promoted. Unless you had a season ticket, you basically just couldn't get into the stadium. So I've been to the Amex once, just before they got promoted. So it was one of the final games they had in the Championship there, and that was amazing. It's an amazing stadium. Like, it really is an incredible stadium. Yes. If I could go to more, I would, but it's about 3 hours away from where I live now. So it would be like a proper...
It's in the outskirts of the city, right?
Yeah. You've got to get like a bus from the... You normally go to, like, you meet in like a big car park and then you'll get a bus over. Or there's a train station as well. You can get the train over.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It's very impressive though. Like, when you're driving to Brighton, you see it, kind of like on your left. It's absolutely massive. It looks like something out of I don't know, like a film or a cartoon or something. It looks completely out of place.
Yeah.
But it's lovely.
But that's dreamy stuff for kids, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you drive past it and you think, oh, one day I'm gonna, play there would be the ideal thing. But even just go there and watch a game, I think would be a dream for a lot of people, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that it's impossible to get a ticket. When I was living in England, I was really naive, coming from Mexico and thinking, well, you can always get a ticket if you get there early in the day of the game. And I went to Manchester that weekend. I went to Old Trafford and I was like, can I have a ticket? And the guy just looked at me like, what are you talking about? I don't remember who was the other team, but it was...
The same happened to me when I live in England. I was so naive as well because I wanted Chelsea season ticket probably, but it was so difficult to get hold of it. So I turned to Fulham and I managed to get one. to get
Okay.
ticket, yeah, and yeah, it's a great experience. You know, it's an
So
old
are you
ground.
a Fulham fan now?
I'm not a Fulham fan. I'm a Liverpool fan, but I really enjoy that experience. So I think I joined the Fulham League in FPL. I think this season.
Oh, nice.
So yeah. so let's move to other topics, right, Leon?
Yeah. So we were wondering, other than FPL, what are your hobbies?
Good question. I play. I've got a few. I mean, I'm really into games, so I've never really grown up from when I was a kid playing video games.
Same.
So I kind of I was obsessed with them as a kid, and then went to university, kind of lost my interest in them a lot, and then the last few years really got back into them. So I got a PlayStation 5, waiting for some decent games to come out for that. Playing Returnal, which is like the most frustrating game I think I've ever played in my life. Other than that, I play chess, I play a bit of tennis, I play football, like five-a-side, not very well. Try and keep kind of active as much as I can. That's about it really. Mostly though, FPL, like it just you know what it's like. It's all consuming. yeah. And now I work for Scout as well, so it's kind of double all consuming.
Is that your main job, or you have a real other job?
A real job. I used to have a real job. I finished university. I did market research stuff for a company for about 5 years, and then beginning of this year, I had the chance to go work for Scout full time. So I do that full time now.
It's kind of the dream, right?
Yeah, it's really cool. Really enjoy it.
You have a hobby. You do it anyway. You're like constantly engaging with the community. Now you can just do it and get paid.
I know, it's great. It's like I go on Twitter and I talk to people, and then the boss says to me, "Great job on Twitter today, Az. Like, you've done really well engaging with the community." And it's like, okay. Whereas my old job, we'd be like, "Az, for God's sake, get off Twitter. You've been on it all day."
Yeah.
It's very different. It's very cool. It's very cool.
So do you? Go ahead.
I was just thinking that. Do you happen to be in your early 30s, maybe? Because I grew up just like that. I mean, completely addicted to video games. When I was 6 years old, I was given an SNES, Super Nintendo. So I fell for it immediately, and I think that FPL suits us very well. I mean, this generation. Yeah.
This generation.
Yeah. I think we were the first kind of properly like addicted generation to something, and I mean you still see it now with kids. Gotta feel old now. Kids these days addicted to their iPads and iPhones and all that, but it often does feel like a kind of form of addiction. You get the highs and lows that come with that kind of addiction, and there's lots of talk in the community about stepping back from it if it becomes too much and not getting too down. I always try and treat it as, I know it is my kind of career now, but in terms of like my own season and things, I still try and look at it with a bit of, I don't know what the word is, humility in a way, but that's maybe a bit too extreme. I try and be a bit lighthearted about it, basically, because you can let it really get you down. If you're having a bad season and you're struggling and everyone around you's doing really well and things, it can get bad. But yeah, I think you've got to remember that it is just a game. And what I always try to remember is after this season as well, like next season, it just all resets anyway. Like unless people are going through your rank histories and calling you out on like 1 million place finishes or whatever, it all comes down to the next season anyway. So it can always get better.
I mean, I guess you did. How many years have you played FPL now?
I think this was my 12th year.
Okay, more or less the same amount of years as I have. But at the beginning, you just play because you're playing with your friends, so you're not paying attention to any of that. And now with all this ranking history, etc., it's kind of hard. I really haven't played like seriously for only maybe for 1 or 2 years. Before that, it was still just play with your friends, beat them, and that's the important part, right? Yeah. And I don't know if it's still for you. Like, do you still like what is more important for you, the overall ranking or beat your friends in your mini league?
Rank.
Now it's rank.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's what happens when you take it to the next level, right? When you start properly looking into stats and doing podcasts like kind of we do, and you open it up to Twitter and you start talking not just to a group of 8, 9, 10 people, but thousands of people potentially. It becomes a lot harder to. I mean, I still have mini leagues with friends, and I still kind of care about winning them. I normally win them quite comfortably. Didn't this year. First year I've lost, I think, to my friends from university, which wasn't great. But mostly I just focus on trying to get a good rank. And normally, if you try and get a good rank, then you tend to win your leagues anyway.
Yeah.
So I try and focus on that.
Personally, I'm in the same boat. I started playing seriously probably 4 years ago, and before that, my rank history is just dismal. I mean, I'm in zombie teams all over the place now. So I had this feeling of, I mean, sometimes I want to just start from the scratch and create a new team, but I think it's very, very difficult to replicate good seasons these days. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the talk about the top 10k, I think now is the top 50k, and there's been really good stats posted about the kind of top managers, the Mark Southerns and all that. Not that I like to give him too much credit, but the average rank for these kind of top managers this year was I think 65k or something like that. And so I think the kind of because the top 10k was the kind of status, if you finish in the top 10k, you've done a really good season. Top 100k sort of all right. I think that's changed just because of how many people play the game, but also how many people are actually on Twitter and Scout and other sites looking at stats. So yeah, it's becoming increasingly harder to do really, really well. I think I agree. I think if I had a team which had a couple of really, really bad seasons, I think I would just keep it, because there's no guarantee that you would start a new team and suddenly finish 5k in the world. You probably wouldn't. Well, I seriously doubt you'd finish kind of below 1 million or below 2 million or something like that. But I think it's a bit of a badge of honour, isn't it? It's kind of, I played it, I didn't really take it seriously. I finished 3 million. Now I take it seriously, do a podcast, and I do a lot better. So
and you can see the results exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, this season was hard. So. This season was hard. I mean, we've been following you and all the bad start stuff, and then trying to climb back up, etc.
Every year.
It's been a couple. Exactly.
Yeah, 3 years in a row. Yeah.
What do you think it is that it's? I've been looking at. I try to see what Mark does in Black Box. That he analyzes these slices of data that are really interesting. And then I was like, okay, let's see what I can find myself. And for example, when I see the season of the champion, they tend to start very well, and then they just stay on top. But what do you think makes that good start?
He's very, very good early on, and a lot of that comes from he's very good at identifying players quickly before they become sort of template picks. He's very, very stats driven, but he's also very, very good at watching players' attitudes and watching how they perform on the pitch. So he was completely unconvinced by everyone slating Lingard, for example, on having low XG and things. He was, I watch the games, I see what he's about, I'm getting him in, keeping him, blah blah blah. And like early on as well, I mean, I don't want to say he's lucky. I mean, he's not lucky. He obviously is one of the best FPL managers around. But like early in the season, for example, he got in Grealish when no one had him, and he was going to sell him for Harvey Barnes the week that Grealish got his 20+ pointer, but had another injury, so didn't.
yeah, that helps.
So yeah, I think getting off to a good start is obviously really important, but it's really hard to do, because but it's all about just getting one or two players in who not many people have got, and if they do well, then you tend to do well. And like before I had all these really bad starts, my best start was when I was 4 at the back. I had 4 wing backs in my team. I had Pascal Gross, and because I had those in place, it meant I was able to move for other players who, like more premium players, and not have to worry about those slots. Whereas this year, I started with like Vinagre, Havertz, players who I had to step out for other kind of mid-price players, and it meant that I wasn't then getting in the top. So I missed out on Kane and Son, for example, because I always felt I had other priorities to get to. So I do think it's about getting in those kind of mid-price budget players, and if you can get those settled, then it's easier to be flexible with the rest of your team.
I agree with you. As I remember pre-season, and you had a tweet on Pereira and Ward-Prowse. I remember that I commented that tweet and I said, "Hey mate, I think I'm going with both too," and you just said we are crazy, and we were crazy back then. But but I mean, I agree with you. It's all about going template, but say 2 spots for those differentials, so to speak. No, only 2 spots, maybe 2 or 3.
I think the problem that I have is I set up. This is the 3rd year in a row that I've set up quite a template team. Had a couple of exactly like you say, a couple of different picks, and then on the last day, got rid of a load of template players and bought in a load more different picks. And when you've got like half your team or 7 or 8 players, different. Because the thing with the template is, if you look at the template and you think, so St. Maximan is a perfect example, right? Every team I saw at the start of the season had St. Maximan in their team, and I just wasn't convinced that he would be a good pick for the season. Yeah. So it's not about just getting in the template players because you think they're rubbish, but because everyone else has got them. It's the equivalent of me going, I don't want St. Maximan, I'll get Shelby instead. And that's when you overthink it. And I did the same with a few years ago with Sigurdsson. Everyone had Richarlison in their team. I think he was 6 million or 6.5. I was like, no, I'll go for Sigurdsson. He's, he might be playing at number 10. It was quite a bit of uncertainty around him, and it was just a complete disaster. And I was just going against the template because I wanted to be a bit different, not because it was actually a sensible thing to do. So I'm trying to cut that out a bit.
But how about Gross, Pascal Gross? You said that yourself. I think you had him when he called that. Was it at West Brom that he called that?
He did, yeah. That's my greatest ever moment. I mean, in all honesty, that was complete Brighton bias.
Yeah.
I would never have had him if I wasn't a Brighton fan. I really wanted Knockaert, and he was injured. He started the season injured, and I looked up Pascal Gross, and I think he created the most chances in the Bundesliga for a relegated team. And I just thought, he sounds good, I'll get him instead. I just wanted a Brighton player in my team to start the season. Honestly, I'd love to claim that it was like some incredible move that I'd planned for months. It was pretty lucky.
You know what? That's an element of luck, but at the same time, I think that there's a narrative behind that. I mean, you support Brighton, and it was for a reason that you chose either Gross or Knockaert. For example, I decided to captain Sadio Mane, in game week 38, and that helped me a lot. But I'm a Liverpool fan, and I knew that he was looking for redemption. You see?
Exactly.
These narratives, you talk about them in Black Box. It's all about weaving narratives. The difficult thing is to untangle them. When they are fake. You see?
Yes. When is it a bias because you really want it to be true, and when is it actually something that's kind of likely to happen? I mean, there was research behind it. I don't think I would have gone for Gross if I hadn't seen that stat about his chances created, and no one really knew that. Well, no one knew that because he was such an unknown player. Yeah. It's been the same with Pereira this year. I mean, I thought he would. I mean, his goal against Everton quite early on was a great moment for me because like you said, I've been talking about him all pre-season. There was evidence, and that comes from a knowledge of the Championship that not everyone has. A lot of people that play FPL will just be focused on the Premier League. Same with Maddison as well. When he joined, I've been watching Championship football and I'd seen he's good. So you can kind of forget that all the research you do, all the games you watch outside the Premier League, these give you a massive edge on a lot of people. And just because someone on Twitter is saying, "Oh, Pereira, he's rubbish. West Brom are rubbish," that might just be coming out of no knowledge at all about how he plays and how West Brom are. So I'm a firm believer that you've got to back yourself on things. Yes. And even if things go wrong, even if you don't get the rank you want, at least you've done it your way, and it can work out. Like when I got into the top 1,000, that was the whole season playing my own way. I never tried to go template, pick players because of ownership, all that kind of stuff. I just picked players that I thought would do well, and it did well. So it can work. It's a better way to play, I think.
It's just so difficult to nail the exact moment you're going to deliver. Like with Pereira, I mean, I had him as well, and that Everton moment was simply amazing, no? But
I know.
But he had done that amazing run. But anyways, I think talking about Black Box, what is your highlight in terms of what Black Box has given you?
Well, in terms of highlight, in terms of enjoyment, very little. I mean, Mark goes on about that Trent Alexander-Arnold goal, which he says it was his favourite moment. That was probably one of the worst moments of my life, to be honest. I mean, the whole thing's been amazing. The reception from everyone, the growth that we've had, going up to like 15,000 subscribers, the messages we've both had. Like we get so many like DMs from people saying how much they enjoy it and all that stuff. The amount of research Mark does for every episode is incredible. Yeah, I mean, there's not been many like real moments. I did enjoy my April Fools on Mark, where I made him think that the sound had gone. That was quite fun.
That was good. Yeah, I remember watching that live.
But FPL wise, it's just been a hard season, so it's hard to get too excited about any real moments, to be honest. But the whole Black Box thing's been great.
So how did that start? Was it your idea, Mark's idea? How did that come up?
So I wanted to do something on my own, essentially. Mm-hmm. A couple of years ago, I was doing the Scoutcast, and I thought I was really enjoying it. But the Scoutcast was very much Joe's thing. So he'd do all the setup, he'd do all the script, he'd do everything. He'd set everything up basically. And that's funny. He's brilliant at it. It's still a great podcast. But I wanted to do something that I could do and deliver on my own. So I set up FPL Black Box originally because I was having a terrible season. It's a bit of a theme here, and just to talk about some of the mistakes I was making and things. And like it was mostly for me really. A few hundred people probably watched it a week. Like it was, I kind of living off the Scoutcast fame, however you want to call it. And then I stopped doing it for a bit. I did Top Guns with Luke for a bit. Then that kind of stopped because he was struggling to find time with work. So then I wanted to bring Black Box back. So I did like a little teaser thing, which was like, I'm going to bring Black Box back. And Mark messaged me and said, I'm really looking at getting back into it next year. Do you want to kind of team up?
Wow.
I know. So he came to me. This is everyone thinks it's me begging Mark to come on, but no. It was great. It was really good.
Timing! What a timing!
I know, it really was. It's one of those things where, like, he barely used Twitter, but he just happened to see me post about it, and then he messaged me at like 3 in the morning or something. He'd been thinking about it for ages because he'd had a lot of health problems from fantasy football and with Scout and working for the Premier League show and stuff. So he kind of wound it all down. But then he wanted to get back into it, and he thought just doing a kind of weekly podcast would be an easy way back into it. So yeah, it was just perfect timing really. And it's amazing how much it's kind of gone from there.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Black Box is kind of that dynamic that he has all this data, but you have like the beliefs, right? Like whatever you're thinking is not easy to change your mind.
I'm quite stubborn.
but that's cool for the program, because even though he's gonna bring you the Alexander Arnolds of the game, you're gonna be like, yeah, but this and that contrast is what makes it really valuable, I think.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think we complement each other quite well, because if it was all Mark, he'd just be completely obsessed with stats and with tables and with graphs. Yeah. And if it was all me, there'd be no prep. So we can't form a happy balance.
I was going to say that I really like that impulsive side of yours. I mean, those counter arguments. I mean, it doesn't matter if he shows like tons of his stats. I really love your counter arguments. As you said, it's the perfect balance, no? So talking about Black Box and your season in general, what are your expectations for the next one?
Expectations for Black Box?
Just season in general. Black Box as well, if you want.
Yeah. Well, my season, I just need to do better. which is often easier said than done. I would just love, I don't know what my expectations are. I just love to get off to a better start and not have another season where I'm trying desperately to rescue a season from the million. I mean, the last 3 seasons have been around the million mark at Christmas, and it's just getting a bit soul destroying now. So I'd love to get off to a good start. Again, expectation is to beat Mark.
Okay.
Nice.
Got to beat Mark.
Yeah.
He's come on. He's taken my black box thing. He's come back to the scene. Everyone, was all excited, and he absolutely thrashes me in the first season. That can't happen again. So I need to make sure that I at least close the gap. But yeah, I'm hoping to beat him next year. In terms of black box, just continue to grow it, really. I mean, we've got ideas for new kind of content we do. I think Mark wants to do more video. I'm going to struggle a bit for time to do more stuff, but he wants to do more videos and single videos, team selections and Q&As and all stuff like that. We've got the Apprentice thing starting next year as well, and we basically want to get it up to the level of some of the really big podcasts. I mean, you look at Andy with Let's Talk FPL with 106,000 subscribers. I mean, the amount of effort and time he puts into that is incredible. But that's you got to aim high, right? The aspiration is to try and close that gap a little bit to him.
Yeah. You mentioned all the history of Mark and why he left, and you're kind of following the steps. Like, you started with the Scoutcast, and then you're doing the first attempts of Black Box, the second attempts of Black Box. I've seen you in the FPL show. How did all the podcast and content creation started? Like, did someone invite you, or you just kind of said, like, I wanna do it?
Yeah, it's a weird. I mean, there was very, very little around when I first went on the Scoutcast. The Scoutcast was it, right? It was the only. It was the one. There was nothing like yours. There's nothing like. I mean, you go on Twitter now, and there's so many different podcasts. I think it's amazing. I get so annoyed with people who say that. Someone says they want to do a new podcast, and someone says, "Oh, as if we need a new podcast and stuff." I absolutely love it. I think everyone should be free to do them. A lot of people do them not for views and not for anything else. They do it just because they want to chat to their friends and get it out there. Like, I think it's amazing. So I'm completely against that. But when I started doing it, it was just a Scoutcast, and I used to use the site quite a lot, and I ended up becoming an admin on the site. So I was deleting comments with swearing in and all that kind of stuff. And then Mark had an event, a Fantasy Scout event, where he invited basically everyone who was helping out with the site to London. And this is Mark. He's one of the most generous people I know. He put his card behind the bar, and he just said to everyone, "Have what you want."
Wow.
Yeah, there was probably about 30-40 people there. I drank. I mean, I nearly bankrupt. I must have bankrupted him that night because I was drinking everything, like tequilas, whiskies, beers. It was a good night. But I ended up talking to Joe, and Joe was Mark did the Scoutcast with Joe and Andy, and Granville as well. But I was talking to Joe for ages, and it turns out he went to the same university as me, so we were talking about that, and we got on really well. And then a few weeks later, Joe messaged me and said, "Oh, Granville's basically going to be stepping down from the Scoutcast because he's doing his political career. Do you fancy coming on and doing one?" So literally the whole thing has literally just stemmed from that invite,
from that chat. Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice. I mean, my question is, have you felt a change from those days and now having like maybe 30k followers on Twitter and all the I would call it fame that people are looking up to you? Like, yeah, it's weird, right? Like you now, everything you say, someone is gonna scrutinize it, and it's gonna be weird to like just live with your decisions.
Yeah, it is very weird. I mean, when I first started doing them, I was so nervous about everything I'd say. I'd do loads of prep before the Scoutcast. I'd have like pages and pages of research and stats that I could quote, and I'd be almost afraid to give my opinion sometimes as well, because I didn't want to dig a hole for myself if it didn't come on. And when you're just starting out, it is quite difficult, because if you do say some wrong things and people start getting on your back and saying, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, what is this," and things, it can be quite hard to build your reputation up from there. So I played it quite safe. But the more I started doing it, the more I realised that people actually like it a lot more if you're just more honest and more, and more open and a bit more, just a bit more open with things. So that was kind of, I think that was probably the decider for me. I could have gone down the big time stats route and done loads of research and loads of tables and things, but I chose to kind of just keep it a bit more casual, and I think people quite like that in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But it's not, I mean, like I say though, it's not easy. I was able to do that because I had that base. So, you know, after I'd done the Scoutcast for a few years, I had sort of 10,000 followers. People kind of knew who I was and things, and I was able to kind of move towards something a bit different. It's very hard when you're just starting off to know kind of who to be. But again, my advice would be you've got to do what kind of comes naturally to you. The prep and the research and stuff is always important to give you that basis, but it shouldn't. I think what sells a podcast is the personality.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So going back to FPL, the season is over, and we are starting to adjust to new things. For example, you discussed price changes for some of the relevant players, and today we learned that Buendia is going to Villa. Not exactly official, but it's happening, I think. How do you see that transfer, and what do you think it means for Grealish?
I think Grealish is gone.
You think? Me too.
They're being linked to Ward-Prowse again today as well. So, you know, 35 million was it for Buendia? Ward-Prowse. I mean, he'd probably cost around the same. He's Southampton's kind of main man. I imagine him going for 25, 30 million too. I think Grealish is no disrespect to Villa, but I think Grealish is just too good. I think he's just too good to stay at Villa for another season. And I think he could. I firmly believe he could play at any side in the world.
Where do you think he goes?
It'd be interesting. I mean, the most obvious would be Manchester City.
Yeah.
But I think it depends on what their other transfer plans are around the likes of Haaland and Kane. Because I mean, Grealish is going to cost upwards of 70 million, I'd say, if they want to prize him. So. Are they going to go 130 million for Kane and 70 million for Grealish? I can't see it. I think if they get one of Haaland or Kane, I think that would be it for them, really. Because Pep isn't someone who, I mean, I know he's spent a lot of money, but if they spent 150 million pounds on Kane, that would be absolutely, that would crush any other deal they've done. I think Haaland would be less, and I think Haaland's probably the more likely one. But I think if they did that, they wouldn't get Grealish as well. I can see Grealish going to maybe Man United.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a theory that he has a lot of friends in Chelsea. However, his position in Chelsea is already highly competed, so I don't think he would go there. But I always see him liking and chatting with all the other players in Instagram.
Yeah.
So because I am a Chelsea fan, I was like, maybe now with all the players that we have, it's kind of a no go.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You need a striker.
Yeah, they need a striker. I don't know who needs.
Everyone. We do as well.
Who needs more a striker, City or Chelsea?
Well, both have found a way to play without one, essentially. But I just think City would win everything if they went for Kane or Haaland. It would just make them the complete package. I think I don't know if Pep's going to be a bit stubborn about it though, and just be like, nah, we're all right. We don't really need anyone. And I don't know with Chelsea whether they will just think that Werner is going to be that player that they want. But I think both sides. I do think both sides need one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not winning Champions League. Maybe adds a bit of pressure, and they need to move. They need to move and probably find out a striker. But how about Buendia? To be honest, I haven't seen him play too much. I mean, after he left the Premier League, but judging by his stats, he seems to be a good asset. However, he disappointed when he played for Norwich in the Premier League.
He really did. And whenever I saw him play, I always thought he's their best player. I know Pukki was scoring the goals, but whenever I saw him in the Premier League, I thought, if you're gonna stay up, it's gonna be Buendia that does it for you. And he just never played. He was on the bench almost every game.
Yeah.
And that season ended, and I thought, well, there's absolutely no way he's going to stay at Norwich. Like, they're obviously going to move him on. He's not trusted in the Premier League. I think clubs are going to be queuing up for him.
Yeah.
I don't know how they managed to keep him for the season, and he's gone on performed. There is that worry in the back of my mind that they don't think that he's good enough for the Premier League, even though it seems ridiculous given the stats he's got. But now he's gone, I think he's going to be an amazing asset. I really do. I think he's. Whenever I've seen him play, I've got those same kind of vibes with him that I had with Pereira and with Maddison.
Yeah.
I just think they're going to make him the absolute talisman of that team.
Yeah.
And I think he makes the likes of Ollie Watkins better up front. But he is someone that if Villa have an okay run, then I'll be starting with him for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking.
How about his price? Probably 6.5.
He won't be any less than 6.5. No
Not
way.
less.
No way. Not now. Not now. He's gone to Villa. I wouldn't be surprised if he came in at 7.
Wow, that's too much. I think. What was the price
Yeah.
of Grealish this season?
Grealish was 7.
7.
Yeah.
Maddison. So Maddison came in off the back of a really good season for Norwich, and then he signed to Leicester. He came in at 6.5. So I think there's a chance that Buendia comes in around the same.
Yeah, I think
6.5.
6.5.
6.5 minimum. But I wouldn't be surprised if they pushed him up to 7.
Yeah.
Hopefully 6.5 though.
Yeah, I mean it's probably the one to watch from the teams that are coming up. We have Brentford as well, and a lot of people is talking about Tony, but that one is a little bit more even more concerning. Probably that's the one that is not gonna be the one that we saw in the Championship, right? It's gonna struggle more in the Premier League with the physicality, etc. So, other than those two, have you already found another one that is coming out from these 3 teams that are coming?
Not really. It's those two for me to start. Tony's going to be in a lot of teams. I mean, often a striker like that who scores that many goals doesn't always mean they're going to do well in the Premier League. I mean, don't forget Neil Maupay was at Brentford. He got 24 goals or 25 goals for them. You know, and he's one of the worst players I've ever watched at times. Not always. Sometimes he can be good, but he is a genuinely bad player a lot of the time.
Frustrating.
Look at Pukki, really frustrating. Pukki as well. You know, amazing start to the season when he was in the Premier League, and then completely tailed off towards the end. Ollie Watkins, I mean, has been amazing. So you know, there are certain players that take the step up, but a lot, you know, like David Nugent, for example. It's very difficult to judge a player in their first season in the Premier League because sometimes their level is the Championship and they're fantastic Championship players, but can't quite make that step up to the Premier League. So he's one that I don't think I will start with, and I think a lot of people will, but I'll be keeping my eye on him.
Yeah. I thought about it, and I I agree. I don't think it's a starter. Maybe in a week or two that we already saw a couple of games, we see how he behaves in those games, and then we can jump. But again, we need to be quick before everybody.
I think it all depends. It all depends on his price and his fixtures mainly.
Yeah. He'll be 6.5. I'm sure he will, because Pukki was.
Who will score more goals, Pukki or him?
Now that's a good question. I would say Tony, because Pukki's now lost Buendia.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think if Buendia really goes, Norwich is already leaving the Premier League before even starting. They didn't have a big team to compete last time, and now they just lost probably their best player. So
I can't understand it. I mean, I think it shows the mentality of Norwich. I don't think they really care. I think they're quite happy. If they were a yo-yo team going up, going down, going up, I think the owners would probably take that. I didn't see any fight from them at all. Yeah. When they were in the Premier League, they were right down the bottom of the table. The owners didn't invest in January, didn't strengthen the squad. Buendia kind of was out of the team. Pukki was frustrated, and there was you never sensed that they were gonna try and get out of it.
Funnily, that season I named my team the Norwich Horror after Lovecraft, But now I'm gonna rename it now again.
Yeah, you should.
You should.
Did you have a good season?
I had probably my worst season after a night run. I ended up like 166k after a great successive run of top 20k.
See, I'm a bit superstitious about naming my team then. So if I have a really bad season, I'll change my team name for the next year. And be like, new season, new me.
So your team will have a new name next season.
It will have. Yeah, there you go. That's an exclusive that my team will have a new name next year. Yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard of something like this. So yeah, I'll rename it, hands down. So
there's just like to say there's absolutely no evidence to say that your team name has any correlation to your FPL performance. Before I start getting flame for that.
Except just mentally, clearly.
Exactly. It's a mental thing, yeah.
Just a final question. I think Leo has one for you. Another one is that I've noticed that you play both Elitserien and Champman.
Yes.
Is it a good idea, you think, to experiment and play different fantasy games? Can it have a positive impact for FPL players?
So Elitserien is hilarious. Because I don't know who any of the teams are or who any of the players are at all.
Yeah.
So I'm purely getting by a Twitter group that I'm in, where I basically just don't say anything and I just watch all the players they're talking about, and I go, okay, I'm going to get this player in because he's mentioned that he's on free kicks, or I've got this player in because he's mentioned he's got a good fixture, and I'm doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And if you talk about strategy, I think there is something in it. It's quite interesting to play a game where I've got no investment at all in watching matches, looking at stats, and I purely do just kind of follow what other people are doing, and I'm doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it does show that there is something in listening to people that know what they're talking about, and because everyone in this group is really, really into it. So I think Twitter can become a bit of a problem because there's so many different voices everywhere. There's bias from people supporting their teams. There's some idiots out there. There's some really clever people and smart. And it's hard to know which ones to listen to. But if you've got a set group of people that you trust and you like, and you listen to them, you can actually do kind of quite well. So that's what I'm finding with Elitserien. And I am experimenting. So I'm not doing any. I'm basically making sure I've always got 2 free transfers.
I've done that. I've done that for probably a couple of years, but with Allsvenskan, the Swedish fantasy game. In fact, I write the Scout community articles, some of them. I write them.
Oh, nice.
And I totally agree with you. If you choose a group of people, a stable one, and you will see the results, no?
Yeah.
I'm in a chat as well, and one of the guys there is number 1 currently, and it's his first season. So I think that experimenting is healthy it's helpful in terms of FPL. I joined Elitserien. I don't know anything about it this time, and I did the same, and I'm doing well. I'm experimenting. I decided to go very template from the start, and let's see the outcome of it. No, Leo is doing the same. If you
I basically did exactly the same that you're doing, but with the Swedish. I never know how to pronounce it. Allsvenskan or something like that.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know any of the teams, so I don't know if it's good or bad. That's a problem. And then I don't know any of the players. Everybody is Eriksen or Larsson, so I don't know who is who. And but I'm following people, and I'm like, for example, here, and I just like see what they are looking at, and I'm just getting those players. There's one defender, Witry, that I heard about a lot at the beginning of the season, and I got him. I put him as a captain, and for 3 weeks in a row, he gave me 9 points.
There you go.
That's not bad for a defender.
I know.
So I mean, just experimenting with those kind of things is kind of fun. I don't know if I can translate that to the way I ever play FPL. Like I don't think I'm gonna.
No,
but
I'm interested in this free transfer thing because I'm not a particularly patient FPL manager. So, often I'll get to the end of the week, and if I haven't made a transfer, I've got kind of itchy trigger finger to do something, and often I wish that I hadn't. So it's quite nice with Elite Series. So I'm making sure that I always save 2, and then if I want to take a -4, at least I can shift my whole kind of team around. Another bit of good advice I had was I'm really into Football Manager. So someone said to start a season with a Norwegian team on Football Manager, because then you learn all the players and the teams in the league and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I'm probably going to start one of those soon as well.
Yeah, that's good. I think I saw this before, but I think Michael, the guy that won, he sometimes didn't use a transfer when he had to. So he basically skipped transfers, which is something that is like, I get you, the anxiety of like, I'm not doing something, my team is, I need to change something. And I think it was several times, I think at least 2 or 3 times that he didn't touch his team.
Can't imagine that.
I think you mentioned that yourself, no? Black Box, when you said that it's very difficult. It's very difficult being patient, and you see your team and you say, I want to have a smashing team for this game week. Yeah. So I need to probably need to sell this one. How about the -4? Maybe it's a good one. Maybe it pays off. So I don't think that in FPL that works. For example, unlike Chantman. For example, in Chantman, I see those guys taking hits every single game week to get those strikers that hold, and it pays off. But it's different, isn't it?
I love Chantman, but Chantman is like, it's almost like a kind of algorithm because it's based on Football Manager. So lots of people spend time watching they do simulated games. So you can run the same game 100 times, see who scored, see what the scores were and all that. And it gives you like a really, really good sense of what's going to happen. Obviously it's not perfect and crazy things still do happen, but if only we could do that with FPL, right?
Yeah. Yep. So speaking of other fantasies, are you playing the Euros fantasy?
Yes. Yeah, really, really into it. Really into it. It's the first international one that I've gotten this into. Yeah. So I've been doing videos for Scout. I've been doing some threads. I've been doing some like fan team videos as well. Really looking forward to it. I think I've always been of the opinion with everyone else. Well, not everyone else, but a lot of people saying they want to break from things. Mm-hmm. But to me, the games are so different. Like fan team with the ability to win some money is kind of quite a motivating factor on that. And the UEFA game, just the difference of being able to make manual subs and change your captain and see how all that kind of dynamic works. I'm just really interested in. So I'm not worried about having a rest or a break or anything. I feel quite refreshed. And to be honest, I'd quite like to do quite well in one of them, so I can go into next season with a bit of optimism. So I've still got it.
So I assumed you already have a boss team.
Well, for the Euros.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Who was the first name in that team?
Good question. The player that I'm really backing to do well is Memphis Depay. I think he's just so well suited to a fantasy game in terms of playing for a good side on absolutely everything, taking loads of shots, in great form, just won the league. Like he's kind of a perfect player. So I think he was the first name on most of my teams. Lukaku as well. He's not gone anywhere from any of the teams that I've made across the different games. The likes of Kane, Lewandowski, Ronaldo, I've kind of swapped in and out, and I'm starting to get to a more kind of settled side now. But I'd say Lukaku and Depay were there. They were there right from the start, and the Turkey goalkeeper actually. Because I think Turkey are gonna do quite well in that group.
Oh, that's a surprising call. Turkey, same here. The first 2 names were probably Lukaku, Depay, and Eriksen as well. Because I saw that they have very good fixtures at home, Denmark. No, I think that the difficult part of this game is rotation, probably, mainly in match day 3. But it's just a difference. It's too complex. Any tips that you would like to share?
Any tips? Yeah, I mean, my biggest tip, I think, is from what I understand not really from what I understand, from what I know of international tournaments, things like the Golden Boot, for example, are won and lost in the group stages. So I think teams that are going for mid-priced or budget strikers to have a stronger midfield, I don't think that's the way to go. I think you're gonna have the most success if you get 3 premium strikers and they do well. So Kane, Lukaku, and Ronaldo, for example, is I just think you're looking at a group stage. I mean, Ronaldo for that Hungary game, I mean, you know, that's when he could get 2 or 3 goals. Obviously harder from there, but I think the premium strikers are really important. And I know people like to look for differentials and look for budget options and try and save some cash, but I honestly don't think the strikers is the place to do it. So my advice is, I think 3 premium strikers are a must.
Yes, what's good also is that we have a great pool of cheap defenders, as far as I understand. So I'm going 4.5. I think I've been tinkering a little bit. Yeah.
Like Denaya's 4.5, Pau Torres is 4.5, Kakir. There's plenty of cheap. I think my most expensive defender's 5. I think. So.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. I need all of those tips because I want to play it, but I haven't checked any of that, and I don't know all of these names. So that's similar to what we were just saying about these other fantasies that you don't know anyone.
It's a completely new game, right? It's completely different. There's so many players that I hadn't heard of.
Yeah.
Like if you'd asked me about the Ukraine before the tournament, I couldn't have named you one player. I you know how they've done, and now I know their recent forms. I know who takes all their set pieces. I know who their kind of upcoming talents are, and all of this. Malinovsky, watch out for him. He's going to be a hell of a player. So yeah, I love it, and I like learning more about different leagues and different things. And I think ultimately it does help you with FPL, because when a player moves over from the Premier, to the Premier League, and you know a bit about them, it can help you make a better decision about them. I mean, Werner was probably the opposite of that because of how the expectation that he had, and everyone really thought he was going to be amazing. But then you look at like Pascal Gross, for example, and he was someone who, because I'd done that research, I knew that he was maybe gonna be quite good. So it's always good to build up your knowledge of different leagues.
Yeah, because there's this myth, in FPL that newcomers aren't as good as expected, but I don't really buy it. I mean, there have been good newcomers such as Salah, for example. You remember
Aguero
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just to close, you introduced this concept few episodes ago about The Apprentice, and when you started talking about that, I just like smiled and I was like, yep, that's good, because the history of this podcast was maybe 3 Christmases ago. I was chatting with a friend. He was playing in my mini league, but he was always last, and he was basically playing but not playing, and I told him like, yeah, you need to change this and this and this, and you don't have to make 5 changes every week, etc. He's like, I basically don't know how to play this game. So like 5 weeks later, he sent me a message and he's like, hey, do you want to get like together and start a podcast? And so the podcast was the basic idea was, let's do this thing where you teach me how this is played.
Oh, amazing.
And we discuss it, and we'll basically discuss the ideas, because he likes football. He just didn't know fantasy football, right? And it's really, really similar to what you're attempting to do with The Apprentice.
Yeah, we've stolen your idea, I think.
I mean, it's the same thing, but it's a different proposition here, because you're gonna take them like separately, let's say, and you have, I don't know, how many players are you gonna get? One each?
It would just be one each. Yeah. Okay. It would just be one each. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think like for me, it's seeing my university friends trying to play it and struggling, picking the likes of Kante and Lee Catamol and these kind of guys in their teams, and not fully understanding the rules. And I think there's becoming a bigger gap between the casual players and the people who take it really seriously. And I think that I want FPL to be really like inclusive for everyone who wants to play and enjoy it, because I think if you're a football fan, I think you can get a lot out of playing FPL, and I like that FPL is such a simple game to get into because the points are quite simple. You haven't got there's no like tackles or interceptions or recoveries and all this kind of stuff. I think that's a massive boost for the game, and I think there isn't too much stuff out there which is focused on kind of new players to the game and trying to kind of teach them the basics and exactly like you say, like who to avoid. You don't need to make your squad doesn't need to be perfect every week. You don't need to make loads of transfers every week. All that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the idea of it. Is it's going to be competitive in the sense that Mark and I both want our apprentices to do well and compete, but also there's the educational side to it, in which also we want to do some videos which are like, you're playing this game for the first time, what do you want to do straight away, and just see who they pick and who they go for, and then be like, okay, well, we don't think you should, you don't need 6.5 defenders in your backline because you can't play them all every week. And it's just going to be really interesting to see what their kind of what their first things they do are and how they build their team and how they manage it, and then just trying to make them kind of understand the differences, and hopefully those videos can then be picked up by other new players who play the game, and they can see kind of hopefully where they went wrong.
I was thinking like how hands-on you will be with these players, because maybe they say like, oh, I want to make 3 changes, and you will be like, whoa, don't. but that basically changes the way they are trying to play.
So it's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. The idea isn't to be overbearing with it. It isn't to say don't make 3 changes. All Mark and I want to do is get the logic right. So if they say I want to make 3 changes because I had a dream last night that Kane broke his leg, then it's kind of like, well, no, obviously we're not going to do that. Come on, let's be stupid. But if they say, well, I listened to a podcast last night and they were saying that Kane is out of form, and I think a switch to whoever, Haaland would be a good idea. Then as long as there's some logic behind it, then for me personally, I wouldn't stop them from doing it. I just want to get that kind of thought process right, so they actually spend a bit of time working out what to do and why before they do it.
So just out of curiosity, as far as I know, you have a PhD in psychology,
Yes.
So I guess that there's some background and how much of an impact that will have with this experiment.
Yeah, I mean, my a lot of people ask me that, how much the kind of PhD plays. I mean, my PhD was in research, so I think it more helps me with the kind of stats, and I love an Excel spreadsheet and all this kind of stuff. The psychology aspect of things, everything I spent all my time doing, kind of was more around like kind of anxiety and anger and things. So it helps in a way with that kind of side of FPL, because I understand why we feel kind of the ways we do. But in terms of decision making, I don't think it massively helps. So I don't think the psychology background is gonna play a huge part. I want to try and look at it. From the research side, the logic side of things, and try and push that more. I'll leave the psychology and the mind games to Mark, I think.
Classic. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. It's been great.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll have you again after the Euros, etc. By the way, England won 1-0 with a penalty.
Who scored?
Rashford penalty.
Rashford. Oh, 1-0. Wow.
1-0 with a penalty.
We are red hot coming into this.
So my last question, I guess, is what do you expect from England in the Euros? How far do you think they can actually go?
I think we will win the group, and then we will get knocked out in the last 16.
Yes, because you will face, if you win the group, you will face either Portugal, France, or Germany.
Yep. Yeah. And we will lose. That's my prediction.
So who wins it?
England. I can't see how France. I just can't see who's going to beat France.
Yeah, France is a beast. He's a beast.
I just think their weakness. I mean, not even their weakness, but Giroud up front was I mean, he was so good for that system, but now they've got Benzema there.
Yes.
I just think that front three with Griezmann, Mbappe, and Benzema, and Pogba being allowed to kind of do whatever he wants, and Kante in the form he's in,
protecting everyone,
goalkeeper. I mean, Kante and Pogba is such an incredible partnership, I think, in midfield, because you know, Pogba gets slated quite a bit for kind of going missing in games and not quite doing it for United, but when you've got Kante next to you, who you know can just hoover up everything that's happening behind you, and Pogba can just push up the front of the pitch, and he's feeding Mbappe and Benzema and Griezmann.
And the amount of centre backs that they have is crazy.
I know. They're like the opposite of England. They've got an absolutely incredible core team, amazing squad, strong in every position. I just can't see who's going to beat them, to be honest. So yeah, France for me.
Yeah,
just
agree.
one last question from me. At the moment, you have an English and England player in your Euro fantasy team.
Yes, I think I'm starting with Kane.
Okay.
Kane.
I do think it's a good group for England. I can't see huge points for him against Croatia, but against Scotland and the Czech Republic, I can imagine he'll get 2 or 3 goals in those games.
I agree.
Yeah, so just Kane for me.
So thank you for being with us, and I'm pretty sure that the Spanish-speaking community really appreciate this a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you so much for having me on.
Cheers.